He was just an old man in faded camo, clutching a $10 bill and trying to pump gas, until a biker laughed, mocked him, and shoved him to the ground. People watched, some filmed, no one helped. Then a door opened, a boot stepped out, and in seconds, the atmosphere shifted. A Navy SEAL, silent, calm, unshakable, walked straight into the chaos. What he did next didn't just stop the laughter, it ignited a movement. This isn't just a story about disrespect, it's about reckoning. And it all started with one forgotten veteran, and one perfect salute. The Arizona sun hung low and cruel over the cracked pavement of a gas station just off Highway 86, its heat clinging to everything like a second skin. Dust danced lazily in the air as the old man stepped out of a faded green pickup that looked like it hadn't seen an oil change since the Bush administration. His boots, caked in years of red dirt, struck the asphalt with a hollow sound. His shirt was an old camouflage blouse, sun-bleached and loose on his wiry frame. A Vietnam veteran ball cap shaded his lined face, its stitching nearly unraveled. He moved slowly, carefully, favoring his left leg as he unscrewed the fuel cap. In his right hand, a $10 bill, folded crisp. It was all he could afford today. A Harley rumbled up behind him, its pipes loud and attention-seeking. The rider killed the engine with an aggressive twist and dismounted, boots stomping hard like they had something to prove. He was big, bald, with a vest full of skull patches and a beer belly stretching taut against a Confederate flag tee. The biker glanced at the old man's gear, then scoffed loud enough for the nearby pump crowd to hear. "Look at this old fossil," he said. "Still playing soldier, huh?" The veteran didn't respond. He just kept his eyes on the pump, lifting the nozzle with shaking fingers. "You hear me, Gramps," the biker barked. "Halloween's over. Time to hang up the costume." A few snickers bubbled up from the other side of the station. A young couple looked over but said nothing. A teenager filming TikToks lowered her phone for a better view. Then the biker did it. With a sneer, he stepped forward and shoved the old man hard. The vet stumbled, hit the ground with a grunt, his cap tumbling into an oil puddle. No one moved, except one man. The rear door of a black SUV parked near the air pump opened slowly. A boot stepped out. Tactical, laced tight. Then another. The man who emerged wasn't large, but something about the way he moved sent a quiet ripple through the station. No words, no rush. He shut the door behind him with deliberate calm and turned his eyes, gray, unreadable, toward the biker. And in that instant, everyone froze. He didn't wear a uniform. No ribbons, no name tag, no salutes. But the way he walked, calm, centered, deliberate, cut through the tension like a knife. His boots didn't stomp. They landed like declarations. His shoulders, broad but relaxed, moved with the fluidity of a man who had been in far worse situations and never once lost control. Logan Reyes stepped out from the shadow of the black SUV like he'd been waiting. His t-shirt clung to muscle hardened by years of combat, not vanity. His jeans were dark, dusty at the knees. The sun caught the ink curling around his left forearm. An eagle clutching a trident, wrapped around a steel anchor. Faded, yes, but unmistakable. SEAL insignia. The kind that wasn't bought in a shop. The kind that had to be earned one brutal day at a time. He didn't speak right away. He just stood there between the biker and the old man still on the ground. His presence wasn't loud, but it was thunder. The biker scoffed. "What, you got something to say?" he snapped, stepping forward. Logan didn't flinch. Instead, he looked down at the vet, who was struggling to sit up. Quietly, without fanfare, Logan reached out a hand. Not because he had to, because respect demanded it. "Take your time, sir," he said, voice calm but with an edge like a drawn blade. "You've earned that right." The old man blinked, disoriented but grateful. He took the hand. Logan helped him up, slowly, carefully, like lifting something sacred. Then Logan turned. The biker squared up like a man expecting a fight. But Logan didn't ball his fists, he didn't raise his voice. Instead, he looked the man in the eyes and said flatly, "You just laid hands on a combat medic who spent 2 years in the jungle patching up boys who never came home." He held men's guts in his hands while bullets cracked over his head. He took a step closer. "Do you know what that makes you?" The biker faltered. "Look, man, Logan didn't let him finish. "It makes you a coward with loud pipes and soft bones." And just like that, the gas station went dead silent. George Halston hadn't always been invisible. Once, long ago, he was the one people waited on. The one who ran toward the gunfire while others hit the dirt. The one who crawled through the red mud of Quezon with nothing but a medic bag, a sidearm, and a prayer he never said out loud. Back then, he was Private First Class Halston, 5th Battalion, 7th Cavalry. Just 20 years old, and already older than most men would ever be. The Army hadn't chosen him for heroism. They needed medics, and he didn't flinch when the recruiter said blood. That was enough. Vietnam taught him the rest. He learned how to find a pulse through mangled flesh, how to hold a man's gaze while shoving a morphine syringe into his thigh, how to pack a chest wound with gauze and whispered lies, "You're gonna be okay, stay with me," even when he knew they weren't. The Silver Star came after Dak To. They gave it to him 2 weeks after he dragged 3 wounded grunts out of a crater under machine gun fire, shielding them with his own body when the mortars started up again. They handed him the medal, took a photo, and flew him back into the bush the next morning. He didn't frame the award. He didn't talk about it. It sat buried in the bottom of his duffel beneath a rolled-up poncho liner, some ration tins, and a dog-tag necklace that had once belonged to his best friend, Mikey Dela Cruz. Mikey didn't come home. George did. That was the difference. Years passed, then decades. Jobs came and went. So did people. The uniform got folded away, the medals tucked into drawers no one ever opened. Time chipped at his back, his knees, his hearing. A stroke took part of his speech. Rent outpaced his pension. Now, George lived in the cab of his truck most nights, parked just far enough from the VA clinic to avoid the security patrol. He kept his things in a worn duffel with one busted zipper and duct tape on the sides. Inside it, wrapped in a faded handkerchief, was a photo. 4 young soldiers grinning in the jungle, all arms and mud. George was the only one still alive. Logan Reyes never liked crowds. He didn't trust noise for the sake of it, or men who talked with their fists but crumbled under silence. He'd been forged in darker places, places where the only light came from tracer rounds and burning wreckage. Afghanistan, Somalia, Fallujah, names that echoed through government briefings and history books, but for Logan, they were more than locations. They were ghosts that still walked beside him. SEAL Team 7 didn't make mistakes. That was the rule. You train until your bones forget what fear feels like, until you can clear a room blindfolded and carry a wounded brother through gunfire without thinking twice. Logan had done both, more times than he cared to count. He didn't need a mirror to remember who he was. The tattoos told the story. A gold trident etched just above his wrist. A silent vow carved into skin. 3 tally marks on his ribs, one for each teammate he couldn't bring back. But there was one rule they drilled in more than any other. You protect those who protected you. Logan had never broken that rule. So, when he saw that old man in camo crumple to the ground, While people laughed or looked away, something cold and ancient snapped to life inside him. It wasn't rage. Rage was sloppy, emotional. This was deeper. This was a switch. He saw the way George didn't even fight back, just clutched his hat like it was the only thing left worth holding on to. Logan remembered that feeling. He remembered being pinned under a Humvee in Kandahar, ribs broken, legs numb, breathing smoke and dirt, thinking, this is it, until a corpsman he never knew dragged him out by the flak vest, whispering, "Stay with me, brother." That corpsman's name was never in the reports, never made the medal rounds. But Logan never forgot. So when George hit the pavement and the biker laughed, Logan didn't act out of pity. He acted out of code. Because men like George had already bled enough. And men like Logan were put on this earth to make damn sure nobody made them bleed again. Logan Reyes didn't wear his past like a badge. He carried it like a scar, tucked beneath the surface, tight as bone. People didn't know what to make of him. Quiet. Watchful. Too calm in a world that moved fast and loud. He wasn't built for small talk or handshakes. He was built for purpose. SEAL Team 7 had been his home for 17 years. Not just a unit, but a bond stronger than blood. Afghanistan taught him what grit tasted like. Somalia sharpened his edge. Fallujah reminded him that even the strongest men could break, and sometimes the only thing holding them together was the man beside them, dragging them out of fire with nothing but will. He had never forgotten the faces. Some gone, some maimed, some living quiet lives like his, tucked into shadows far from the headlines. And one face he remembered most wasn't even from his own team, a combat medic, Vietnam era, wrinkled hands steady under pressure, shirt soaked in blood, shouting instructions through a hurricane of noise while others screamed or went silent. Logan had met him once, in a hospital hallway in Kandahar. The man had volunteered through a veteran exchange program, retired, technically, but when bullets flew, he'd stepped forward like it was 1969 all over again. That medic's name was George Halston. Logan didn't forget people like that. So when he saw George shoved to the pavement like trash, something ancient stirred inside him. Not anger. Anger was emotional, unstable. This was older, simpler. A vow echoing from every mission, every funeral, every dog tag clenched in blood-streaked fists. You protect those who protected you. He didn't move out of heroism. He didn't do it to be filmed. He moved because the world had forgotten what men like George gave. And Logan Reyes didn't tolerate forgetting. He wasn't there to make a scene. But he would make a statement. Not through shouting, not through fists. Through presence. Through stillness that demanded respect. Because when someone puts their body between you and death, the debt doesn't expire. Not on Logan's watch, not ever. The biker wasn't done. His ego, swollen and bruised in front of a growing audience, pushed him to make a second mistake. He stepped forward with the swagger of someone used to winning bar fights, used to people backing down. He cocked his arm back, maybe to shove again, maybe worse. Logan didn't give him the chance to decide. The moment the biker moved, Logan's hand snapped out. Not frantic, not wild, surgical. He caught the man's wrist midair, palm open, fingers clamping down with quiet finality. There was no theatrics, no yelling, just stillness. The biker froze. Logan didn't tighten his grip out of anger. He didn't have to. It was like being held by steel forged in purpose, unshakable, calm, absolute. "I wouldn't," Logan said, voice low and level. Each word weighed like ordnance. A hush swept over the gas station. Conversations died in throats. Even the pumps seemed to go quiet. The biker tried to pull back, but Logan didn't move. His eyes never left the man's face. "You just put your hands on a man who bled for your right to be this ignorant," Logan said. The words didn't explode. They landed, heavy, direct, final. The biker blinked, something in his expression shifting. Not remorse, not yet. But something older, something instinctual. Recognition. Logan let go, deliberately, like releasing a weapon he no longer needed. The biker stumbled back half a step, looking around now, suddenly aware that all eyes were on him. He wasn't the loudest man in the room anymore. He was the smallest. A teenager holding her phone dropped it to her side, ashamed. A gas station clerk behind bulletproof glass leaned forward, eyes wide. George stood quietly behind Logan, dust on his sleeves, blood on his knuckles from the fall. He didn't speak, didn't need to, because in that moment, everything had shifted. The bully had become background noise, and Logan Reyes, silent, composed, immovable, had just reminded everyone watching what real strength looked like. For a long moment, no one moved. The air was thick with something unspoken, heavy as the desert heat pressing down on the cracked asphalt. The biker stood frozen in place, ego deflated, fists useless at his sides. Behind the pumps, people stared, some with guilt, others with awe. A few held up phones, but even they seemed unsure whether to record or lower their eyes. And then Logan moved, not toward the biker, not toward the cameras. He turned his back on all of it. He stepped toward George, still hunched near the curb, one hand bracing himself against the fuel pump, the other curled around his crumpled hat like it was the last piece of dignity left to him. Logan dropped to one knee beside him, not in weakness, not in pity, but in reverence. Slowly, gently, he took George by the arm. "Come on, Doc," he said quietly, using the title old medics had always earned. "Let's get you up." George hesitated. Then, with effort, he rose. As he straightened, Logan stood too, and without a word, brought his right hand up in a crisp, precise salute. It was not casual, not polite, it was military perfect. Wrist locked, fingers together, elbow sharp. A salute that belonged on a battlefield, not at a gas station. And he held it. Held it like the weight of it mattered. The world around them stopped. Drivers killed their engines. A trucker leaned out of his cab, eyes narrowed beneath a sweat-stained cap. A little boy sitting in the back of a sedan pointed out the window, asking his dad what was happening. No one answered, no one could. George didn't return the salute, not right away. His hand trembled too much. But then he drew in a shaky breath, squared his shoulders the best he could, and raised his own hand. Slow, imperfect, but true. Two soldiers, separated by decades, saluting in the middle of nowhere. Not for show, not for forgiveness, but for the simple, sacred truth that honor, real honor, still had a place in the world. The footage hit the internet before the sun had even set behind the Tucson hills. A teenager's shaky phone video, 37 seconds long. No filters, no editing, just raw silence, boots on pavement, and one perfectly executed salute that cracked through a nation's numbness like thunder in a chapel. It started on a local Facebook page. Then a veterans group picked it up. Then a retired Marine shared it with the caption, "You protect those who protected you." By midnight, it had over 4 million views. People didn't just watch it, they felt it. Something about the way Logan turned his back on the biker without a word, something about how he dropped to one knee beside a man the world had written off, something about that salute, clean, unshakable, reverent, made people pause for the first time in a long time. Comments poured in. Who is the old man in camo? Why was he alone? Why did no one help him? Where do I send thanks? A grainy screenshot of George went viral too. Him in his battered ball cap, standing just barely upright, returning the salute with a trembling hand. Veterans began stitching the clip into their own posts. Stories surfaced, medics who'd saved lives in impossible conditions, soldiers who'd come home to silence, not thanks. One woman wrote, "My father was a Vietnam medic too. He never talked about it. Watching this broke me in the best way." News outlets caught on next. Fox, CNN, MSNBC, didn't matter. The image was stronger than the divisions. But beneath the headlines, a harder question rose like smoke. Why was a decorated combat medic lying on the pavement while a gas station crowd looked on in silence? The biker's face was blurred, but the damage was already done. The internet had long memory and short patience. People didn't just want answers, they wanted action. Because for the first time in years, a single act of quiet respect had reminded them what dignity looked like. And now they wanted to know who failed it and who honored it. They found the biker within 48 hours. Not hard, really. Internet justice has sharp teeth and a long memory. A blurry video and a partial license plate were all it took. Within hours, his name was trending. A former bar bouncer known for cheap intimidation and a rap sheet that included one too many assault charges swept under the rug. He issued a shaky apology on his cousin's back porch. Something about misunderstanding, something about being provoked. No one believed it. No one cared. The gas station, now plastered across every major outlet, moved quickly. A formal statement appeared on their website and social pages. "We do not tolerate the mistreatment of veterans or any member of the public on our premises. We are reviewing our security protocols and offering our deepest apologies to Mr. Halston." But George hadn't asked for apologies, and Logan Reyes didn't wait for them. 3 days after the salute, Logan uploaded a single post. A plain black background, white letters, Operation Stand Tall. Beneath it, a single sentence, "We're done letting heroes fall through the cracks." There was no donation link, no merchandise, no flashy rollout. Just purpose. By week's end, Operation Stand Tall had chapters opening in 7 states, veterans and civilians joining forces to find and support forgotten servicemen like George. Not with parades, with beds, with meals, with dignity. Logan never spoke at length about what happened that day. He didn't need to. His silence had said enough. Instead, he showed up. To shelters. To council meetings. To church basements where old vets lined up for canned food with their medals hidden beneath jackets 3 sizes too big. And always, by his side, George. The man who once slept in the cab of his truck now stood at podiums, not for attention, but for those who couldn't speak anymore. When asked what changed everything, Logan gave the same answer every time. "That man got knocked down, and the world watched. I just decided we shouldn't." In the middle of a divided country, they had built something simple. A reason to stand tall, and someone worth standing for. The apartment wasn't fancy. A 1-bedroom walk-up with creaky floors, faded wallpaper, and a view of a laundromat across the street. But when George Halston turned the key for the first time and stepped inside, he didn't see any of that. He saw peace. He saw a roof that didn't leak. A bed he didn't have to climb into sideways from a truck cab. A kitchen where he could make coffee without counting quarters. More than anything, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. His name on a lease. The place had been arranged by a local nonprofit, Homefront Hands, who'd seen the viral video and acted without hesitation. Veterans helping veterans. They didn't ask him to speak. They didn't ask for a story. They just handed him the keys and said, "You matter." But it didn't stop there. 2 weeks later, under a pale morning sky, George stood beneath the weathered flagpole outside Tucson City Hall. The stars and stripes above him were old, threadbare and sun-stained, but still flying. A small crowd had gathered. No reporters, no red carpets, just community. A few police officers, a couple school kids holding signs, local vets with patches on their sleeves and history in their eyes. Logan stood at the front, dressed in a plain black button-down and boots that had seen too many deserts. In his hands, a small velvet box. He didn't give a speech, he didn't need to. He walked over to George, opened the box and pulled out a set of dog tags. Clean, polished. The metal gleamed faintly in the early light. George took them in his weathered fingers and read the inscription. George Halston. You are not forgotten. No rank, no blood type, just truth. George didn't cry. He just nodded, like a soldier receiving orders he understood down to the marrow. Then he reached up, slowly, and replaced the old tags around his neck with the new ones. And for the first time in years, he stood a little taller, not because his back hurt less, but because someone had finally seen him and said, without question, "You still matter." The gas station hadn't changed much. The pumps still groaned, the coffee inside still tasted like rust, and the asphalt still cracked under the weight of too many summers. But there was one thing different now. Just to the right of Pump 4, beneath the shade of a young oak tree someone had planted in fresh soil, sat a bench. Simple, clean, steel and cedar. On its backrest, etched in smooth black letters, "In honor of George Halston, Combat Medic, U.S. Army. You are not forgotten." People came, sometimes without knowing why. School buses pulled in and unloaded groups of wide-eyed children on field trips. They'd gather around the bench, their teachers quietly explaining who George was, what happened here, and why that mattered. Some kids sat on the bench, others left paper flags. A few just stared at the inscription as if trying to understand something too big for words. Veterans came too, on foot, on motorcycles, in wheelchairs. Most didn't talk. They didn't need to. They just sat, touched the bench, then moved on, like it was a checkpoint on a longer journey. And every November 11th, as the sun crested the eastern horizon and painted the pavement in gold, a small group would arrive. No flyers, no news vans, no megaphones. Just Logan Reyes and the men he served beside. A mix of uniforms and plain clothes. Beards gray now, backs a little stiffer, but eyes sharp. They lined up in silence. No speeches, no applause, just presence. At exactly 11 o'clock a.m., Logan would face the bench, stand tall, and raise his hand in salute. One by one, the others followed. A row of stillness in a world that never stopped moving. Across the lot, someone always lowered their head. A father whispered to his son. A woman wiped her eyes behind sunglasses. That silence, brief but full, spoke louder than anything words could touch. It said, "We remember," not just the man, not just the moment, but the truth behind it. That even the forgotten can become symbols, and that sometimes the strongest tribute isn't carved in marble, it's carved in memory, one salute at a time.